Good evening, everyone. My name's Naomi Kelly. I'm the city administrator for the city and county of San Francisco. Thank you. My fan club over there in the back. But welcome to the city of San Francisco and welcome to USF. Today we are gathered here as beneficiaries of the civil rights movement to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. I am proud to stand before you as the first African-American, the first woman city administrator.
Naomi!
Thank you. I am grateful to be inspired and mentored by many great civic and civil rights leaders and my educational leaders, which includes USF Law School. And and my family members who have mentored me and have paved the way for me along my career path. I could not have gotten there without them. My greatest inspirations are my parents, William Little and Maria Little, and I want to talk about how they were inspired by the March on Washington and Dr. King's speech, which subsequently has passed on to me. My mother was among the 200,000 people who joined Dr. Martin Luther King on the March of Washington 50 years ago and stood up for the rights for freedom. And as a teenager growing up in Washington, D.C., she and her church did peaceful demonstrations leading up to the March on Washington where they would go in front of the White House. Now you have to remember the time. This was a time where they would go there and racial epithets were thrown at them and people would come up and spit on them and they had to practice turning the other cheek. A very, very scary time. But both of my parents made me fully aware the importance of that speech and the importance of education in the future of Black America. As the first woman and African American city administrator, I vow to do the best job I can possibly do for the city, as I've done from the outset of my career. And I'll continue to draw on the inspiration and guidance from my parents and a civil rights leader and my educational leaders in our history and culture and their relentless fight against prejudice, intolerance, and hate, their consummate energy, intelligence, and courage, and their unshakable persistence, unflinching sacrifice, and unwavering faith. We all know the fight is not over yet. I will keep fighting what I call the 3 J's, jobs, justice, and jubilee, in my capacity as a public servant. I will continue to ensure equal opportunity for all to compete in the public competitive contracting process. We'll continue to fight for local jobs for those who need jobs. We will continue to fight for justice for people who will serve despite their ethnic background, religion, economic, immigration status in their government, and policies in process. And as for Jubilee, it gives me such joy that we had just recently celebrated the historical victory of the same-sex marriages in San Francisco as being the first county clerk's office in this state to stay open in California to perform ceremonies for same-sex couples during our Pride weekend. We should continue to celebrate these historical events, diverse cultures, and heritages that make San Francisco unique. 50 years ago, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech inspired and changed many lives. We, as beneficiaries of his legacy and of the civil rights movement, can keep his dream alive if we do all we can and do our share by keeping fighting for social justice and equality for our generation and the next generation. Thank you and welcome.
Don't say it. I've known her for a long time, but I won't say how long I've known her. Only her and her father know. Okay, I saw her when she was in the stroller when her dad was rolling her down years ago. She's beautiful. She turned out just wonderful. Great job, Dad. Thank you, Father Privette. Thank you, Naomi. A couple acknowledgments. Want to get to several members of the city family who are with us here this evening. We want to acknowledge them. From the Human Rights Commission, Faye Wu Lee is here. Just wave your hand wherever you are, Faye. Thank you. Michael Sweet, the Commission Chair, Human Rights Commission. Thank you. And this lady sat next to me years on the police commission, and I was her vice president a couple times. She is the director of the Human Rights Commission, Ms. Teresa Sparks. Toye Moses, director of the Southeast Community Facility. Where is Toye? There he is. That's Toye. I think it was, I don't know if it was Rhonda's here. Rhonda Simmons here? Where is Rhonda? I don't know where she is. Okay.
Oh, and Mr. Brown.
Huh? I was gonna get to him. I was gonna save him till the end. You know, you can't put him. Either do him first or you're doing him last. I gotta say, this lady right here, legend in San Francisco, Rosalind Swig, is with us this evening. And when I say this name, he will stand, wave, and we all know who. The former, it's hard to say former here, Mayor Willie Brown. Mayor Willie Brown. I've been around this university for a long time, too long. It hasn't been too long, but it's been a long time. And I can, of course, remember the events of the civil rights movement. I was actually on this campus the day Dr. King died, and we all cried. You know, in those days, all of us on universities were trying to do our thing. And we couldn't do the big picture, so we did our little picture. And on this campus, when we founded our BSU, I was the first chair of the BSU. And in many ways, we were trying to, oh, wow, must have some BSU members here. Now you know who started this whole thing, right? And in those days, we were trying to do what we could to be part of the movement. And the movement, there was all the adults, and then there was a whole bunch of youth who were involved. Last Sunday on my radio show, Three Soldiers, I had a youth speak, spoken word artist who came on. And I thought it only fitting, since we have all these adults here and all these adults in the program, that since youth were such a big part of, you've seen those old videos when Dr. King finally said, look, we need young people out here to help us move this thing forward. So representing all of the youth who are involved in the movement at this time, I want to bring forward a young spoken word artist from Youth Speaks, Miss Monet Boyd, who will do a piece representing young people. Monet, come forward.
Hi. My name is Monet Boyd, and I'm 16 years old. I go to El Cerrito High School, and I've been writing poetry since I was like 11 years old. It was a way for me to write down how I felt, my struggle, and then also things that I saw around me. When I got involved with Youth Speaks, an organization to have youth speak, I put my pen and paper to life. I did spoken word, and I was able to relate to others with my humble testimony. And this piece that I'm about to read for you guys is called Dark Skinned Girls. And I wrote it because sometimes being dark-skinned is like a burden, as if it's not okay to be dark-skinned or to be lighter is better. So hope I display that in this poem. I was told as a child never to trust dark-skinned girls with pretty white teeth because they are loud, ratchet, or ghetto usually. And look what I grew up to be. See, I am far from these things but still put in this category not because of my ethnicity but literally the color of my skin. As if my God was not pleased with making me. As if I should put my melanin to shame because of society and the world around me. I should hide myself, strip myself of my skin until the color the world can bear to look at is upon me. I promise I didn't ask for this skin, I just wear it. One of my friends said, I could only be ghetto if I was Monet's skin tone. And that night I stared in the mirror and wondered why God would make me so dark if he knew. That I would be forgotten when the lights go off, hit with the lowest blows, and would be stereotyped by my own people. Why would he do that? I thought that I was supposed to be made in perfect peace and in harmony, made in the image of my God. But maybe I am. I must be. Because every day I am being beat, being crucified because of others' insecurities. He knew he had to shield me in the right armor so no one could see my scars. He knew my pain before I even felt it. He knew my greatness, so he had to shield it. Because he knew that people would try to take it. My God had to prove the light can still shine in a dark place like the intensity of 10,000 suns, knowing that he would be glorified through me. Thank you.
Just had a flashback. Everybody remember Black is Beautiful? All right, Monet. I welcome to the stage the Dean of the School of Law of the University of San Francisco, John Trasviña. Dean.
I have to follow Monet. Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph Marshall. And I know I'm the new kid on the block because I'm the one who has to follow Monet. It is an honor. It is an honor to be your Dean of the School of Law, and it's great to be home in San Francisco. I'm grateful to Father Brevet and Provost Turpin and the law school community for the opportunity to lead the law school forward. I add my special welcome to our students. We are your law school. We will be taking special efforts to be a more visible and present member of the university community, and I welcome you to include us in your USF experience. And a special welcome to all of you who've come from outside our campus who are visiting this evening. We take seriously our mission to be the University of San Francisco. Today we look back half a century ago. I dare say the vast majority of the people in this room assembled here today were not present then. And increasingly, when I ask students about whether their parents were involved in the civil rights struggles of the 1960s, they tell me their grandparents were. In order to make real our increasingly multicultural nation's promise as a beacon of hope for freedom-loving people the world over, and the progress we have made, it is important to go back to those days 5 decades ago in front of the majestic Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The March on Washington was an assemblage of people power converging on Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, only occasionally seen every few decades. 250,000 Americans marched on Washington that hot summer day, each representing thousands and thousands of Americans who were standing up for both racial equality and job opportunities across the nation. Now, I will defer to our main speaker, the man who was there and whose words you will soon hear. But this was the largest public gathering in Washington, D.C. until that time in our nation's history, only surpassed by some of the anti-war marches that followed it later in the 60s. African Americans, teachers, students, union workers, clergy of all faiths, and people of many walks of life came together to appeal to the conscience of the nation and demanded action that would enable this nation to live up to our constitutional ideals, that would free African Americans from the shackles of poverty and discrimination, and free all of us from the reality of segregation that was as routine as it was immoral in many parts of the country in 1963. Just 8 weeks after the March on Washington, college students right here in San Francisco engaged in a massive sit-in of a diner on Geary Boulevard for its utter failure to hire African Americans in visible jobs at the restaurant. The students won that fight and carried it on to retail stores throughout downtown San Francisco, and students from northern and western cities put their lives on the line for the cause in towns across the South a year later, in Freedom Summer 1964. The cause in 1963 was both economic opportunity and racial equality. Racial equality was then and is incomplete today without economic opportunity. And economic opportunity is incomplete without racial equality and fairness. The power of the people unleashed in 1963 helped bring about action in Washington and a 5-year span of civil rights victories and progress unparalleled and long overdue in our American history. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act, particularly Title VII, established the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and prohibited race, religious, national origin, and gender discrimination in the workplace. In 1965, President Johnson signed into law the Voting Rights Act to end literacy tests and ban poll taxes. Progress under the Voting Rights Act is threatened today, however. Also in 1965, the Immigration Act was our message to the world that for the first time in our nation's history, we would admit people on an equal basis from every region of the world. 1966 and 1967 brought about the first meaningful federal aid to education in the form of Head Start and bilingual education programs. And in April of 1968, as the nation's response to the assassination of Dr. King, President Johnson again moved a drag-your-feet Congress to put the Fair Housing Act on his desk, to sign it into law that it was against federal law for the first time to deny buying, renting, or lending opportunities on the basis of race, religion, national origin, or color. We stand before you, and you will take your steps forward in a better place than our mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, because of the courage and tenacity displayed on August 28, 1963. But the reverence for the past must not equate with passivity today or in the future. Our journey continues. Dr. King had a dream on that August day. Today, many immigrant students have another dream, to remain and be reunited safely and legally with their parents here in this country, to contribute to our future in the same way the friends they have grown up are able to do. The downturn in the economy in 2008 stripped away billions of dollars of wealth in black and other minority communities. It is starting to come back, but we must resolve, all of us, that the damage to families caused by that downturn never happens again. The path you take begins today on this campus. By the year 2029, with the year that marks the centennial of Dr. King's birth, most of you in this room will have attained the age Dr. King did when he gave his famous speech. Your education here at the law school and throughout this university must and will empower you with the ethical values and analytical minds to shape the arguments at city halls, courtrooms, and boardrooms to empower people and end poverty and discrimination. The University of San Francisco of today looks like tomorrow's California. At the School of Law, more than 55% of our students are women. Over 52% of our incoming class are students of color. We are preparing all of you to be successful contributors to your future employers and communities, and strong and caring leaders, ethical professionals. And you are preparing each other. We all change the world from here. In the year 2029, children who are starting kindergarten this week will be your age now. Will they have benefited from integrated, quality schools and be ready in the science, technology, or other fields of that era? Will they be able to interact, appreciate, and love in a more diverse setting than we have ever seen before? Our job today is for the answer in 2029 to be not just yes, we can, but yes, we did. It is now my honor to introduce the mayor of our great city and county of San Francisco, Ed Lee. I've known him, admired him since his days as a civil rights attorney at the Asian Law Caucus. Mayor Lee has worked hard to keep the economy and economic recovery on track to create jobs for our residents. Mayor Lee keeps his focus on making San Francisco a city that celebrates diversity and leads the way in job creation, innovation, education, healthcare, and the environment for future generations. Mayor Lee began his career in civil rights as a community activist. He later served as director of our San Francisco Human Rights Commission, fighting for people who weren't able to have their voices heard. Now, as mayor, he continues the fight for those same people by implementing programs and services that help our most valuable vulnerable communities. We are honored to have you, Mayor Lee, as you carry us forward tonight and lead us forward as one city. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Trasviña. Thank you for that introduction and also for all the things that you're doing here. You and Provost Turpin are going to be helping these students really learn about not only our history, but you'll be helping a lot of students in this city succeed. So thank you very much for your work. It's my honor to be here tonight. Good evening, Mayor Brown. Good evening, Father Privet, and all the administration here. And it's really exciting to be here, to be part of tonight's celebration that recognizes the historic 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Certainly a very critical movement towards equality and growing struggle of civil rights in America. Just a few minutes ago, I had the pleasure of, again, meeting my good friend, Dr. Clarence Jones, and reliving those years, 50 years ago. We still marvel what we were doing 50 years ago ourselves, and trying to give, and I know he'll be up here in a minute explaining perhaps some key moments that we should all try to understand. Because as Dean Trasviña said, and other speakers, and Joe said earlier as well, struggle continues. It is with us. But we look back, who could have imagined 50 years ago that we would have had today the first African-American president of the United States? Who could have 50 years ago have imagined we would have had the first African-American mayor of San Francisco in Mayor Brown? Who could have imagined? Who could have imagined we would have the first Chinese-American mayor in San Francisco? These events, of course, just do not happen by themselves. It takes great sacrifice. Ultimately, it takes American heroes to allow those situations to exist. And it also highlights the great leaders right here in San Francisco who continue to improve the quality of life for all of our residents, celebrating diversity and equality for all, and shape our nation's history. As we look around the room, and of course, our own Dr. Clarence Jones is here tonight, but also many other leaders reflected in our city administrator, Naomi Kelly, in our San Francisco commissioners, including Joe Marshall, Sheryl Davis, and Susan Christian from our Human Rights Commission, who you'll later hear this evening. And also, of course, again, John Trasviña and Jennifer Turpin for their great work. One of the highlights I have in my own personal history is that moment where I was serving as the director of the Human Rights Commission, and I went to Mayor Willie Brown at the time. And I kind of indicated to him that, yes, I've had many years of advocacy on behalf of people, but I really wanted to do something more direct. And so he asked me, what was that? So I want to get into the real business of the city, where people get hired, contracts get awarded, the real business of the city. And he said, why do you want to do that? And I said, because I believe the real civil rights movement is in economic justice. And that I felt that women-owned and minority-owned businesses could be a key to that. And that as I grew in these positions, there was something else that I wanted to do. Something that I had learned from the civil rights movement. Something that Ms. Obama says constantly and the president says constantly. And that is, when you get into these positions, it is our responsibility to keep the door open for the next persons. And that is why today you see, as I've become mayor, you have the director of the Public Works Department. You have the general manager of the Public Utilities Commission. You have the new director of the Juvenile Justice. And of course, you have our own city administrator, all people who came from backgrounds that 50 years ago would not have been welcomed in these jobs. It's not enough in those years where I saw African Americans being laborers, being bus drivers, being mechanics. Now they help me run the city and create opportunities for others. And it is now their responsibility, along with me, to keep the doors of opportunity open and keep alivened the dream that we are so cherished with, and know that to accomplish that dream, we have to deliver on so many of the other promises that were made. It is up to us to deliver those promises to the kids. Yesterday morning, first day of school, I went to Denman Middle School, the middle heart of District 11 of our city. And we delivered for the very first time computer tablets to middle school kids, many of whom are African American, Latino, and Asian from different countries, who've never had an iPad before. And that was the first day they began to load their homework on iPads, begin to understand and sense they are part of today's new economy and new jobs. They will get those skill sets so that the Twitters and the Zyngas and the Salesforces will hire them in a few short years. They become part of economic justice in San Francisco. And they received their very first because, in recognition of everything that's going on in education, all the struggles that we've had before, our middle schools are not caught up yet. All 12 middle schools now have those computer sets for the very first time in the history of our school district. We are making that commitment. We are delivering on those promises for everybody. We want this city to be the city for the 100%. And ultimately, one of those kids will also become the mayor of San Francisco. As was stated earlier, one of my highest priorities continues to be job creation for so many other people, linking our residents and our youth with job opportunities. And so it was last year we announced very boldly with our supervisors, and I see Supervisor London Breed out there as well, you're not missed for sure, that she joins me on the board in signaling to our youth a group of people that I know is at the heart of her agenda and others at the Human Rights Commission that work with me, that we created 5,200 jobs last summer for our youth. And we're not still satisfied with that. This year, we announced 6,000 jobs, and the numbers will come in very shortly as the summer ends. And I hope that those numbers will reflect that accomplishment, because jobs and dignity are part of that agenda. But we're not going to leave it just for the jobs. We are not going to leave anyone behind in our city's success. We are forming new partnerships for the very technology industry companies that are beginning and have been locating here in San Francisco to help us create the new workforce. Because if we don't concertedly create that workforce, it will be created by somebody else for other people. And so we formed a training program connecting San Francisco residents of diverse backgrounds to the jobs in the tech sector called Tech SF. And they've already begun to enroll their graduates into the very technology companies that are successfully locating here in the city. As I said earlier, we're making progress in our public school systems. The test scores at an all-time high. Truancy is down in our school district. We're one of the highest performing entities in the state, but we're not going to be satisfied with that because we know our middle schools are not good enough. And we're going to get there. We're going to get to parental engagement in our middle schools. That's where the downfall, that's where the truancy is at, and we will help them succeed. We will deliver even more resources. In fact, this year, the city and county of San Francisco will help with over $100 million of resources to our San Francisco School District. We're not going to let them be isolated any longer. This is the future of our kids, and public education is at the heart of it. We will help them succeed. We're also making sure that this very expensive city is more affordable to more people. And I know there's a lot of concern about that, and we need to work on it. That's why I pushed hard on the Housing Trust Fund that was passed last year, creating $1.5 billion, not million, $1.5 billion to build more affordable housing in the next 30 years in San Francisco. We're not stopping with that. City Administrator Kelly and I are working very hard to re-envision our public housing. You know that's old housing. You know that's isolated poverty. We can't let that happen any longer. We've got to build mixed income housing and keep our promise to the residents. They're going to have safe housing, housing that works, maintained for generations to come. Not only is it a promise, we were doing that. We are doing that as we speak. And yes, while we're taking care of our residents, we're also, once again, being a model to the nation by welcoming immigrants and empowering new citizens by launching an initiative called Pathways to Citizenship to ensure that 100,000 San Franciscans who are eligible for citizenship can pursue their new opportunities and be part of building our city's economy. When President Obama says comprehensive immigration reform is good for the country, we begin by saying here in San Francisco, and it begins with citizenship. And that's the goal that we have. Everybody must fully participate in our economy. We continue to be one of the most diverse cities in the country. That diversity helps us maintain our strength, our voices to be heard, and that's why I believe our city becomes, again, the #1 model for affordable health care and for housing and for jobs. Now, as you all know, San Francisco is a city that celebrates and rewards pioneers, innovators, groundbreakers, and risk takers. And our friend, Dr. Clarence Jones, is just that person. Dr. Jones, we are grateful for your contribution to the civil rights movement as not only the attorney, the advisor, and the speechwriter, but your words have been inspiring not only to all of us, but to me personally. It inspires me to do more. It creates the conditions upon which I do not sit on my laurels, that every time we accomplish something good, we say, what's next? Because the dream has not been fulfilled for so many people. And so your words continue to inspire me, inspire us. We make the changes that we want to be, and we march ahead, and we will not turn back until everybody is taken care of. So it is with great pleasure that I celebrate you, Dr. Jones, and present you with an award on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco in honor of the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Please, Dr. Jones, step forward. Dr. Jones, on behalf of the city, please accept this award of recognition for all your words that live on today and will live on forever with us.